Your work explores the importance of play in learning and discovery. How does that apply to the data world?
I think it almost applies to anything, right? Because when we're looking at things like a data set, we're kind of used to using the same tools over and over, and many of us here probably have the same backgrounds. But when you play, you kind of immerse in the fun of it. You let yourself get lost in playing around, usually bringing different perspectives. So the argument I'd make, and most of my students would make, is that by letting yourself play and be a little silly and find new playmates, you can look at things in a whole new way.
So it's universally applicable.
Yeah, universally applicable.
Kind of along the same lines, that you have a course that actually takes place in a circus lab, is that right?
We do have one, yes.
I wanted to ask you, did that come about because you had access to a circus lab, or did you have the idea for the course and then had to go find the lab?
So I live in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and I can drive to 4 circus schools within an hour.
Is that right?
And actually the largest one in North America happens to be there, Circus Juventus.
Okay.
So I'll admit that class is a little bit of letting your hobbies guide your work. We needed a dynamics class, and we needed a way that we could convince 20-year-old undergrads not to go on vacation for 4 weeks, but take a daily Lagrangian dynamics experimental class, which doesn't sound exciting if you're going to stay in the lab. But I'm also an aerialist. So I work at a couple circus schools and managed to convince them to let us suit up our engineers and sensors and motion capture and stick them up.
So I imagine it's a much easier sell.
Much easier sell. Yeah, the University Safety Office and I have had many, many conversations about many, many of our classes.
Kind of along those lines, do you feel like lecture-style courses should just be done away with, or is there still an application?
I think it comes down to learning and education. These days, we can access information in so many places. You can do the training part of it by going online. You can read a book. You can watch a video. I think your opportunities in the classroom are greater than that. It's not a one-way delivery. Are there some people that can give an engaging presentation? Probably. And so maybe for them, lecture works if they're getting the learning that they want across and if they're engaging with their students. I think as a general rule of thumb, should everyone go in and lecture in a class? That's probably not the way things should go. But if you have the right person, I think the opportunity and the domain where in-person classes work is when you have a professor or a teacher who is doing something that connects with their students. For some, maybe it is giving an engaging lecture. Others, it might be taking them to the circus school. Maybe it's having them do problems in class, having them present. But I think the concept of there being one right way to do classes, as the sage on the stage model was for so long, I think that's gone away. I'd be loath to say no one should lecture because we can probably all think of that one person who made them amazing. But you have to ask yourself as an instructor whether you're adding any value to a video of yourself if all you do is stand there.
Right, so play to your strengths.
Play to your strengths, yep.
When did you first encounter the maker movement? And what was that experience like when you encountered it?
Very early on, actually, when I was a graduate student at Caltech working on a mechanical engineering PhD. But at night, I would sneak off to Art Center College of Design, first as a student and then as a faculty member and consultant there. So I had this dual life as engineer and art and design teacher. And so I went to the TED conference early on because I had heard about it. This is before it was online, and so I saved up my teaching salary for the year and went. And there was a new magazine that was launching there, and so O'Reilly had thrown out copies of the first issue of Make on tables. And mine is dog-eared. I brought it home. It became like part of the text for my robotics classes for artists. And that was the initial introduction. It made so much sense, though, as someone who, a lot of my work is on education, the first Maker Faire I went to, I remember just being in awe because people were playing. People were celebrating their things. It wasn't competitive. It wasn't people trying to one-up the next person. There was this true give and take and glee, the sense of whimsy that I don't see that sense of whimsy in most science fairs. But if you go to a Maker Faire, it's really hard not to smile.
Sure.
So for me, that was kind of an immediate link.
It seems like more and more people are starting to understand that things like sleep, mindfulness, these are all good things. They help unlock creativity. Do you feel like play is being incorporated into that?
I hope so. It's interesting, whenever I speak, particularly at conferences more like this one, I often will have people who come up to me and they tell me about their kids. And so they can relate to it right away through their kids. And I would argue when you look at companies, that the companies that are allowing some of that play to creep up, not just for the kids who are visiting, but for the actual employees and the ones who are leading teams, they tend to be more successful. So I think we are hearing play. I don't know that everyone will take it seriously. Any of us are parents. We all have to confess at some point we've probably uttered the stop playing and do your homework, or like stop playing and be serious for a minute.
Sure.
But we've kind of lost that. I mean, for little kids, it's well established that in the early preschool years, play is how you learn. And I don't think that ever goes away, but we've sort of taken this, turning our noses up that playing isn't serious, play isn't where the good stuff happens. And I think when you really delve into great innovation, you start to hear these stories of serendipity and play and things that make you smile, and that wasn't someone at their cubicle.
How do people who are just totally locked into work find time or find justification for incorporating play? What would you recommend there?
As an engineering professor, it's a little hard to convince people that even in my work that this is the right thing to do. When I went up for tenure, I was allowed to put in 3 pieces of work, and I wanted to put in my stuff on Play-Doh and constructive circuits, and that scared the engineering department. And I got permission to have a 4th, so I could put a very serious journal paper on synthetic jet propulsion analysis. So I think everyone fights it, and you have to just make the choice that you're going to do it. And I think if you're in a position where you lead, and so I lead a lab, I teach a class, I have to go to an extreme. Right, I have to be so on the edge that if I go 10 steps further than most of the people that these students are around will go, maybe my students will take 1 extra step. If I'm studying 3 days a week on a trapeze, maybe a student will try it. So I think if you're in a leadership position and you really believe this is important, you've got to demonstrate it. It's not something you can push off. You can't tell the group to show up in the room and start brainstorming and expect magic. You really have to set that tone. And it's not chance. I would say you have to set the stage for magic. You can't force people to play. You have to build that community.
Last question for you. What people or projects are you following these days?
Oh, there are so many. I've always been a fan of the Lifelong Kindergarten group at MIT. So Mitch Resnick, who created Scratch, which is a wildly popular free programming language for kids. But out of that lab has come Lego Mindstorms, has come Scratch, has come the Makey Makey, which you can turn your bananas into a piano. So I'd have to say that Mitch's work and his thinking about play and learning is probably one of the most influential to my work.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us.